I tell ya! There's a lot of nostalgic hits from the 2000s. I've talked a lot about the teen shows, I've talked about the cartoons. Today I really want to focus on the cartoons and talk about the things that weren't so positive. For example, the worst episodes.
Open their mouth as wide as possible, except for you, Chowder. And the 1 and the 2 and...
Yeah, I was bored again. My Cartoon Network videos have been doing really well lately. Thank you guys so much for your support, and keep it up. Now today we're going to be talking about the most offensive episodes in Cartoon Network 2000s TV shows. I wanted to go through all of the signature shows for the channel and go over actually some of the worst episodes. I did research on what people didn't like, looked at a bunch of lists until I found a couple opinions that I agreed with, and I compiled them into this video.
Hey, yo! Say, what are you guys doing in there?
Go away, Erwin! This isn't the time!
When I say offensive, I mean the audience is offended. Perhaps they wasted their time with this episode. It wasn't closely aligned to the premise of the show, which is what the show's originally about. Something that perhaps is disrespectful to the characters and what the show has set up, like retconning random things. That could perhaps be offensive. Something that's unclear, unproductive, like it doesn't move the story forward or anything. Offensive because you're wasting the audience's time. Another one is, I think, would be like ruining your legacy. Like if you could watch this episode, it really doesn't stand up for the premise, it doesn't carry out the themes of the show, and it probably doesn't entirely feel like an episode of said show.
No, 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 no! You're supposed to do it yourself!
So the episode in question for The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy is Scary Poppins. At Billy's house, Gladys calls for Harold, Billy, and Mandy to report to dinner. She, however, excuses Mandy because she's like, you're an external house guest, and you're not really part of the family. So Mandy goes home, and her parents are scared of her, almost to a comical degree. When she demands dinner, they have had enough of Mandy, push them around, and decide to call on a nanny to help them. The nanny does everything she can to get Mandy's family to stand up for themselves, but Mandy is too ruthless and too mean to stand up to. Everybody seems to be focused on Mandy's attitude and like the way she treats people, which, yeah, she doesn't treat people super well in this episode so far.
You wanna smooch me, don't you?
Grimm decides to intervene by making Mandy's parents assertive, but sadly, like, even them, Mandy wins, explaining that the town is under her control and she is only letting the nanny live here before ordering her minions to capture her.
Quick! Just like we planned!
Mandy is so aggressive in this one. This one's a reference to the TV show Super Nanny, which I could see why it's a little off topic when it comes to being in this realm of a show. So this episode, a lot of the critiques I've been having about this are that it makes Mandy completely unlikable. Out of all three of the main characters on the show, Mandy got like kind of treated the absolute like worst. Even online, Maxwell Adams, the creator of The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, said himself that he regrets making it. According to discussions online, a lot of fans are like, overall, I didn't think this was like a really bad representation. I mean, they had a couple of funny jokes. I don't like the design of the characters. I feel like they're a little too graphic, and not in a funny way, but in an unnecessary way. It didn't feel like it coincided with the underworld in any way. But I personally felt like this one didn't really deserve to be called the worst episode. I mean, I've yet to find one that is worse than this one, but I think this one isn't as bad as people are saying. Or if this is the worst episode from a really great show, it's fair because it's just a good show in general. This is just one of the poorer performed ones. I feel like Mandy goes from unlikable to like downright abusive in this one, and it kind of puts everybody in a poor light. Like the family isn't interesting. Like everybody is kind of like selfish or manipulative, and the motives in this episode seem to be very selfishly driven. All this extra making it seem like Mandy is like just this hypnotic dictator that's living in plain sight is really, it gets just so dark. I noticed a common reason that these episodes get criticized are because they're toward the end of their life cycle. Like, this isn't season 5, as opposed to, like, the fact it only really has 6 seasons anyway. I feel like the writers don't always stick to the premise. They get more wrapped up in the characters or jokes they want to tell, and that's not necessarily their fault. And I just think overall, if this is one of the worst episodes of Billy and Mandy, this makes it seem like a really good show, because this isn't that bad at all. Next, we have the Codename Kids Next Door. So I actually found a couple people talk about this episode, Operation Caramel. But, you know, obviously it's written out in Morse code. This one is often brought up a lot, apparently. It's one of the last episodes in season 6, which is normal because the last episode we did with Billy and Mandy was also like that. I feel like the episode definitely gets its reputation from the gender swap at the end of the episode. So in this episode, number 5 is in Guatemala. She encounters Heinrich von Marzipan, who is creating an intricate sugar patterns, and he reveals that he has a plan to reclaim what he lost 5 years ago and tricks her into a ritual that strips her of her coolness. Later, the rest of Sector V arrives to the Sector U treehouse, where Heinrich traps and transforms them all into the same curse that happened to number 5. They all lose their coolness. Number 1 becomes a nervous wreck, number 2 becomes a drooling Neanderthal, number 3 is a sullen goth, and number 4 is a coward. I feel like number 4 and number 1 kind of act similar, like they're not really special in this, and I don't think number 2's counts as, like, what is a drooling Neanderthal? Like, this is weird.
Is this it? Are we here?
Heinrich explains that the ritual is performed once every 5 years, and it creates magical caramel for the victim's most valued traits. It almost traps it in it. He wasn't affected because he lost his prized quality a long time ago. Number 5 stows away on his candy copter and steals his bag of caramels, even though she's stuck not being cool the whole time. She's a nerd, I guess is how they're showing her off.
You willingly give your caramel away. It releases the part of you that's trapped inside. Just hand it back to me, and you'll be your old self again.
Cornered on the rooftop and reveals she secretly kept one of the caramels years ago to prevent. Number 5 is cornered on the rooftop, and she reveals that she secretly kept one of the caramels years ago to prevent this complete transformation. She convinces Heinrich that sharing it will break the curse, and he reluctantly returns it, undoing the spell. The next day, everything returns to normal, and now cured Heinrich, revealed to be actually a female, Henrietta von Marzipan.
Now go to help undo the wrongs I have done.
Her teammates are grossed out by the twist, except number 4, who remains clueless until number 1 explains it to him. And I could see why everybody had such a problem with it. It was like probably the whole gender reveal thing. I don't think this episode is an entirely missed opportunity, though. I think if you showed me this episode out of context, I would still think this show was impressive. I'm not sure if that just goes to the quality of its worst episode versus its best, or just my own personal opinion. When Heinrich was originally a girl, I think it was like a one-off joke, but because of how irrelevant it was to the plot, it came off as distasteful, almost like pandering to the audience. I could see why people didn't like this episode. It didn't really like respect its legacy. Like, if you watched this episode out of context, I don't think you would walk away being like, oh, I want to watch The Kids Next Door again. Like, this one might have been a hard representation for it. Although I personally think that it's a cute episode, given that, like, caramel gives this entire different side to people, like specifically like sugar, so much like a zombie or like no control of yourself that you become your most immature version of yourself. Although it does kind of read to me like a commercial for kids not to eat their candy. Unlike The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, I think it's very well tied into its own premise, where clearly number 5 is in danger and there's like a very clear goal with the sugar. I don't know. The episode takes place in Guatemala? It's been a while since I watched this show, and it left another good impression on me, so I mean, I definitely think it's not a complete mess.
Now we gotta go find where Heinrich is, huh?
Number 4.
Then we have Chowder. The episode I've been finding a lot of people talk about is the fire breather. Okay, so in this episode, Mung Doll and Chowder are cooking dancing Diablos, which are extremely, extremely hot peppers. The Diablos ignite Mung's mustache, he panics and accidentally releases them. Chowder eats the Diablos to stop them from escaping, but he can't open his mouth without letting a large stream of fire since he ate the Diablos raw. He accidentally sets the entire kitchen on fire. Later, Mung, Schnitzel, and Truffles have to make a dish by singing as loudly as possible. The show is so creative.
Hot lava. hot lava, mama.
Chowder is banned from doing so because the flames, obviously, he will hurt people if he sings. After a few minutes, Chowder snaps open his mouth, setting the kitchen ablaze again by accident and ruining the souffle process so he can't keep the fire in his mouth for long anymore. Despite this conclusion, Mung is angry and basically doesn't let anybody eat dinner as punishment, which is kind of far, even though it was his own fault for not keeping Chowder in the other room. Later that night, Chowder is sobbing with his mouth closed, and he writes a goodbye note and uses his hat as an air balloon to leave. Mung goes up to Chowder's room to apologize and tell him that he could learn to live with him being on fire, but finds his goodbye note in bad writing. Chowder finds the dragon's cave, and after fire dueling with one of his 3 dragons, befriends them, and the 4 have a great time with one another. Chowder digests the Diablos with extreme flatulence, okay, and is kicked out, leaving them another goodbye note as the dragons look at him sadly. He ends the episode by happily singing to Mung, Schnitzel, and Truffles to work in the kitchen. I really like the joke about, like, look what you've done, now the animators are gonna have to draw that fire. So this one is, like, probably one of the earliest bad episodes, because this is season 2, episode 3 of Chowder. Usually the other shows are at the end of their run, but this one is kind of early. I mean, it might have to do with the fact that Chowder actually ran for 3 years and 3 seasons, as opposed to Eddy and Eddy, who did 6, Grim Adventures, who also did 6, and like it's just different. But this is the episode with the most controversial reception. I still feel like it's wildly entertaining. Maybe they didn't have time to have filler episodes, but like if this is the worst one, then this show must be incredible, because compared to the other 2, this one it's on premise. It's still like a really good one. It doesn't feel like it actually panders. It just feels like they made some writing choices that didn't necessarily pan out, but that's never like a negative thing. Like when you're working on a TV show and you have a bunch of writers doing the same show, it's hard to stay consistent, and I think they did everything right, and it came out that way. Character episodes mainly due to Mung's uncharacteristic behavior when he encourages Chowder's antics with Pepper. Like, he's kind of an irresponsible adult in this scenario, and he's the reason the chaotic situation, it gets more out of hand, and it's just like, it just makes him less appealing as a person. I think it's also like the over-the-top chaos. This episode features like so many exaggerated things happening.
Chowder! Don't open your mouth!
And it just felt like it was like too repetitive. Like it was a lot of gags more than it was necessarily like weaving a storyline. And it's just coming back to Mung's portrayed as like the most irresponsible, which feels out of character, especially for some of the best moments in earlier Chowder. Okay, for Ed and Eddy, we have Season 5, Episode 18, Smile for the Ed. So in this one, all of Peach Creek is getting ready to get their photo taken at school. Lee spills her perfume on Jimmy's clothes, so he heads to the door, only for a chipper Johnny to notice that Jimmy and Plank are actually wearing the same outfit, and Jimmy makes a run for it while wailing about being too generic. The Eds then join in the line, and Eddy examines his face in Johnny's reflection when Double D notices and comments on it. Eddy explains that his mom promised him the key to Eddy's brother's room if he manages to take a good picture this year. Which, by the way, if you guys haven't seen yet, I recently did a review video on Ed and Eddy's final episode, the film Ed and Eddy's Big Picture Day, which is ironic because that's not about a picture day and this episode is, but you know what I mean. So check that out if you haven't already. But basically, Eddy is like, oh, we need to get the perfect picture. I need that key to my brother's room.
You blinked.
Until Kevin says dork, causing Eddy to jerk right before his pose. Dork. Eddy gets his photo back and it's disgusting. He's upset and Double D tries to comfort him when he sees the photo, but there's nothing really complimentary he could say. Double D whispers to Eddy that he's a member of the photography club, and he could use his camera to retake Eddy's picture. So this cheers up Eddy, but Eddy remembers that if his mom sees the current picture that's horrid, she's gonna be mad, so he feeds it to Ed. Unfortunately, Ed eats the photo, and the teacher points at him angrily, and the photo lands in the drum set, which is Kevin. Of course, he's a drummer. Later, the Eds exit for lunch, Eddy feeling confident that Double D's picture will impress his mother, so they go back to the lockers, only to find a piece of paper stuffed into each one. It's a copy of Eddy's horrid photo. When Double D tries to make Eddy think rationally, Eddy simply gives Double D a huge stack of photos, and they hustle to store them into Eddy's locker.
If that photo ever gets out for my mom to see, I can kiss my brother's room goodbye! I bet you there's more!
Suddenly, all the kids in Peach Creek plaster these photos everywhere, and Eddy is embarrassed. It's like a race to get all of them hidden. Meanwhile, Eddy keeps trying to fix a better picture up, and it just does not work. This episode doesn't feel super out of place. I think maybe people didn't like it because they're used to seeing the episodes take place in the suburbs, and since it's a little bit more of one of those school episodes, it's not as appealing. But I definitely think there's a lot of imagination that goes into this. In the end, all the Eds get in supreme trouble because apparently Double D impersonated the principal, which Eddy didn't even know about, and they're stuck cleaning out the trash at the back of the school. I don't remember any school having that be the punishment. In the end, Eddy realized a picture that one of them drew of him is so much better than his actual picture, so he brings that home to his mother, and the episode ends. When you think about it, it was written to be more of like a dramatic episode with more dialogue than the Eds are used to. Usually they're storyboard-driven episodes with slapstick humor, the Eds running around causing scams, and this just feels like a really simple episode. Although I would argue that this is one of the better ones, and if it is the worst, this is a pretty good one as well. The characters still feel the same, and everything is funny still. Although I can see what people say online about the humor in it. Like, it's like not super funny, it's just a plot, really, of Eddy trying to get these pictures done, and all the jokes that are in it are just repeated and repeated. It's not anything special. And I definitely wouldn't recommend this specific episode to somebody who's never seen the show, so I guess I'd have to give it points for that. But otherwise, I don't think this is an embarrassing episode either.
Aw, Ed, what a lovely gesture. Although, maybe you should give it to him when he's not so upset.
So those were the most offensive episodes of Cartoon Network. Do you really think they're that bad? Because I don't. I mean, it's one thing to watch a 10-minute episode and not laugh, but it's another thing to think an episode is just downright pandering to you or wasting your time. I feel like I've had a lot more worse experience with live action shows because they are quicker turned around, so they don't really have as much time to catch stuff like that. Meanwhile, animation takes so long, like you could re-edit as you're going to make sure things still work. Like, it has time to tenderize, as the kids say.
I can finally talk again! Oh, wait.
But I thought it was fun to do this as an exercise, especially after watching all the Cartoon Network films based off the TV shows. Like, there's definitely different things I'm remembering that appeal to me, and every time I see these shows, there just happens to be something different. I'm glad that even though these weren't the best episodes, they weren't horrible representations of the show. But I do get where fans are coming from, especially if you care about these properties. When the writers take it not so seriously, or it feels rushed and nobody cared enough to fix it, it almost hurts a little bit more with animation, because it seems like that proves that there more people didn't care than did. Yeah, what do you guys think? Do you remember these episodes? And if so, like, what is a worse episode? I'm starting to think that things are never as bad as we remember, but they're never as good as we remember either. So TV has had its ups and downs, specifically kid TV. Whether it's something really grotesque and disturbing that make it not fun to rewatch an episode of a TV show, or just something overplayed. Maybe the show's repeating a similar annoying plot line that just gets unbearable and makes you feel like you're wasting your time. I just did a video on the worst episodes of the best Cartoon Network shows, and I think I'm gonna continue it today with Powerpuff Girls, Flapjack, Foster's Home, and Regular Show. Now, we are going to be having a fun time because I digged a little bit deeper for this one. Thank you guys so much for your comments on the last video. I think I found some really interesting contenders for these new additions. But you know what? Enough talking. It's Johnny 2000 time. What's up, guys? Johnny 2000 is a YouTube channel dedicated to retrospectives based on the 2000s media landscape, like video games, TV shows, and physical media. Today we're going to be diving in to the worst episodes of Cartoon Network shows, the ones that are so unbearable that it's almost offensive. Yeah, you heard me right. Now let's get started. So for the Powerpuff Girls, this episode was made in a time that these episodes were all perfect. It's really hard to find a bad episode of this show, but I did a lot of online research and I think I found the one. It's called Moral Decay. In the episode, the girls are given $1 from the professor. They cleaned up the house, and they finally get to learn the value of money. Buttercup is the most taken away with this new invention of money.
Mine! All mine! To do with whatever I want! I've never had this feeling before!
Well, I'm glad you like it.
And is almost addicted immediately. I already can tell where this is going. So Buttercup accidentally hurts Bubbles, knocking her tooth out. Oh my god, this is actually a really serious injury. Of course, she apologizes profusely, feels super bad about it, and I love the way she apologizes. Like, it's definitely aggressive like she is, showing that she's not that stereotypical rude character. She does have a heart, and she's just naive. She's obsessed with how good this feeling is of getting $1. But this is where it kind of gets dark. So she likes the feeling of getting... So Bubbles wakes up the next morning and finds that her tooth is exchanged for $1. You know, that same thing that really made Buttercup happy the other day? It sparks an idea that maybe if she gets a tooth from Bubbles, she can get another $1.
You could make a lot of money that way. Lots and lots of money.
And then we get a montage of Buttercup trying to hurt Bubbles constantly and knock another tooth out of her.
Sorry!
Professor Utonium calls her out on this, and she's a little ashamed. So she's like, yep, I guess I'll stop doing it. She doesn't think about it until the next day when they're trying to stop evil villains and somebody gets their tooth knocked out. She realizes, of course, I don't have to hurt Bubbles. I could just take the teeth from the villain. So in the middle of the night, Buttercup gets her first $1 from another person's tooth. Gross. And she becomes addicted to this feeling. Suddenly she goes around and out of her way to stop villains just by punching them in the teeth and taking them home. She creates a whole business out of this. She even gets an entire sack of dollars. Oh my god, there must be at least 100 in there. I can't believe what she's doing here. Buttercup has gone full on evil. When she feels like she's taken everybody's teeth and the phone stops ringing of more villains, she's like, I need to get more money. So she shows up at Mojo Jojo's house. We don't see anything, we just cut to the dentist the next day, and it turns out all the villains we've known from throughout the show have teeth issues. Oh wow, surprise, surprise. Mojo Jojo is the most angry about it, and everybody realizes the common theme is specifically their teeth are knocked out.
Outrage and outrage! Something must be done!
Now this is where the episode gets really bad in my opinion. Blossom and Bubbles get a call saying that all the villains are together at this one place, and turns out to be Mojo Jojo. When they arrive at the place, all the villains are surrounding Buttercup. And this is where the episode really falls flat for me. All the villains surround her, and Blossom and Bubbles do nothing. They're just like, you deserve this.
Sorry, Buttercup. You know what they say? An eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth.
And I don't know if that's a great moral. I definitely think she should have learned her lesson or, you know, like, made up for it. But the idea that she deserved this is, like, definitely promoting violence in my opinion. And I understand, like, they could have had her get her comeuppance by, like, this happening by accident, not by the other Powerpuff Girls hoping for it. Like, that's just so devious. I do like the overall premise of doing one bad thing can lead to more bad things. Like, it's definitely relatable, but in this scenario, the way the episode ended kind of retcons everything that's good about it so far. I actually got recommended this episode in the comments from somebody else, and I'm glad. Thank you guys so much for showing it to me, because it would have been really hard to find. That show is really long. Overall, I'm not happy with it. This is definitely one of the negative episodes, and if you guys ever watch it, you'll see what I mean. It's not that it's like horrifying or as bad as Flapjack over there, but it's definitely up there and not the best way. Now, speaking of offensive episodes, guys, when I first started this video, I didn't expect this to be me bashing Cartoon Network. It just feels like, because I know, even at its worst, it's still a really impressive cartoon company. Sure, it has its odd moments and its really weird bits that don't necessarily have to do with the plot sometimes, but it's never been completely bad. Until I saw this episode. Yep, The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack. The episode is called Fish Heads. I went in really optimistic because, you know, so far all these videos I've been doing, like, the shows have never been horrible, but I definitely feel differently now.
Good luck with that, lady.
Fishhooks is not only gross and disgusting this entire episode, but it's also feeling like a repeat of an earlier season 1 episode. The episode I'm referring to is the one where Flapjack and Knuckles collect a bunch of candy wrappers, only to find out that they're being used to find a map to Candied Island.
The episode begins with the dock hag sweeping the dock to make sure the Stormalong Harbor is the cleanest harbor around. Then she notices candy wrappers from Flapjack and Knuckles as they eat out of the trash cans, forcing the two to clean up after themselves.
Once you've canned some fish, you'll be too tired to litter.
But she forces the two to clean up fish heads as community service. Later at the candy barrel, the two try to pay Peppermint Larry in fish heads, but he refuses. Dr. Barber sees the heads and asks Knuckles where they got them and offers to pay for more. The episode is similar to the older one because this is why it's similar, because it's literally the two characters collecting fish heads to exchange them for something else, but it turns out to be a diabolical plot in another direction. Spoiler alert. So these disgusting fish heads are way worse than candy wrappers. Dr. Barber is the only one interested in them, and he wonders where they got them, and Knuckles realizes this is an opportunity. They could sell the fish heads to him, keep all the money.
We're cutting them out of the deal, boy. We're peddling these fish heads to every dumb, ugly sucker in Stormalong.
When they try to make the fish heads useful and sell them to people, it goes horribly wrong. It's cool because Flapjack uses them as tap shoes, which is disgusting, but almost the imagery is really disturbing up until this point. Just the way all the Stormalong characters are designed are not pleasant, and all the fish heads, every time they're seen on screen, they do something disgusting like plunge a toilet.
I wonder why Dr. Barber wants them so bad.
Nobody wants to buy them, so they try to go to the barber, but the barber's actually using them as a way of creating this elite monster that gives people good haircuts. Don't know why this is the goal. He's trying to create a breed of elite fish head barbers.
Ding.
The creatures escape and cause pandemonium among Stormalong, giving all the people in buildings haircuts. But not just good haircuts, bad haircuts, and ones that incorporate these disgusting fish heads. So you have not seen the last of them. In fact, this is only the beginning of how gross it gets. Dr. Barber panics, appalled that his creations are such horrible barbers, and Flapjack notices a bunch of cats stuck in a net. He's like, okay, obviously they like fish, they can help us. He releases them and hoped that the cats will eat the fish-headed monstrosities. The plan works until the cats start coughing up hairballs, and this part is even worse. The fish-headed barbers reassemble themselves as one three-headed monster.
We're definitely gonna die this time, Flap.
Meanwhile, the dock hag confronts the monster and faces it the same way she faced Knuckles and Flapjack in the beginning and forces them to clean up the mess. For some reason, this giant monster stops doing haircuts and agrees to doing that. And that's what stops the danger. I don't know why it was that easy all along. I don't know why the cats couldn't just do it. In the end, everybody's celebrating at the candy store, congratulating Flapjack for defeating Dr. Barber's fish heads until they're reminded that it wasn't actually Flapjack who did that, and they can't have their desserts. Yeah, overall, this episode was really disturbing to me. I don't think there was a lot of necessary imagery that needed to be in here. I was really upset for a lot of the stuff I saw on screen. Although the cats were really cute during this. I think I would watch a spin-off series with these cats, as long as we didn't have to see the fish heads. But even then, the cats were kind of gross at some points. Let me know if you were one of the people that suggested this episode, because you ruined my life by making me watch this. This is by far definitely one of the worst, most offensive episodes of Cartoon Network I've seen. Not because story-wise or anything professional, just because of the disgusting imagery that didn't help forward the plot or didn't necessarily need to be there. I felt used. Okay, next one. So surprisingly, it was a lot harder than I thought to find a really bad episode of Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Now, mind you, that might be because of my own personal connection to the show, and I just loved this growing up. But I do feel like I have a critical eye. If something weren't perfect, I would tell you. But over a bunch of little forums and IMDb, a couple things I found, they suggested this to be one of the worst episodes, and I can only really trust the internet. So it's called Foster's Goes to Europe. Here I am excited that it's going to be about this episode where all the main characters get on a bus and go to Europe, and it wasn't necessarily that. So we start with Blue talking about the trip to Europe and saying that they all have to learn the language, with Eduardo, Wilt, and Coco also excited about the event.
Who's the reason we're going to Europe in the first place?
Max.
But who mailed in the winning ticket and waited 6 to 8 weeks for shipping and handling?
That was Mac too.
Okay, but who was there when Mac got the call that his winning ticket was the winning ticket that won? Oh, Really? That was you?
Blue talks as if he's the one who set up this entire event, but they reveal that Mac has literally done everything. And it's moments like these that I forget how funny Blue is. He is the most selfish, self-absorbed character I've seen on any show ever, and this is like immediately reminding me of that in this cold open. Everybody's psyched, and Mac shows up ready to go with his suitcase. But he's really stressed out because it seems like nobody else is ready. Except for Eduardo, who brought like 12 suitcases.
What could you possibly have that takes up 12 trunks?
You said pack only the essentials.
I already can tell this is going to be a series of like 4 or 5 running gags with each of the characters having an issue on how they get packed for Europe. Mac realizes it's a lot harder than he thought to convince Blue to go. It seems like Blue is very hot and cold throughout this whole special. Like one second he's like, I don't feel like going. And another second he's like, yep, that's all I want to do. Because he really wants to be where all the fun is. And it seems like Madame Foster is in the middle of trying to have an awesome tea house party, much to Frankie's dismay. So Blue goes from wanting to go to this house party to wanting to go to literally Europe over and over again.
Can you believe it, Blue? He gave me the ticket so I can go to Europe and see my creator and her mama and papa. 'Cause I'm going to Europe.
Sorry, changed my mind.
We get this new side character that's really cute. She reminds me of Annie, and she's basically like, I want to go to Europe because my creators might be there, and I've longed for them so hard. And it's clear that, like, she deserves to go more than any of these ungrateful friends. Mr. Harriman is focused on his itinerary, and Mac has to keep correcting him, having to redo everything over and over again.
My schedule says nothing about an interrogation. I insist we make our way to the airport post-haste.
We can't go anywhere till we get the spark plugs.
Oh, then I must revise the schedule accordingly.
Frankie doesn't trust Madame Foster, so she hires a babysitter, adding only more time to everybody's preparation.
Been my sitter for almost 80 years. Don't worry, I know just how to work her. A cup of chamomile gardens puts her right to sleep.
Mac gets more and more stressed as the straight man character, as he is focused on trying to get everybody on this plane. Both Wilt and Eduardo try to decide between the stuffed animals he wants to take, but they're both so indecisive. Finally, when it seems like they're ready to go, event after event just prevents them from getting out the door. Mac tries to offer to do the itinerary for Mr. Harriman, but it's not helpful. Once it seems like everybody's ready to go, of course Blue is the only one that's being difficult.
Blue, you gotta go to Europe. Remember Super Funland?
I'll go to the one down the street. They take real money.
Finally, they're all ready to go, but everybody has to go to the bathroom. Mac allows them to go, then they come back and they're like, actually, we're hungry. So Mac actually has to make them food really quickly. And this is such a stressful episode so far because I've had to get on a plane, and you know how hard it is to be fully ready for such a big trip like that. Then they have to go to the bathroom again. Finally, when they're ready to go, it seems like the bus is broken down. Wilt admits that somebody might have done it on purpose. I thought it was the Europe girl, but it seems like not the case. The Europe girl gets one last chance to come, and she is not allowed to. Madame Foster gives Mac one last hug, and it's really awkward for a moment.
Gonna miss you.
Me too? Hold on.
As they finally get to the plane, ready to go to Europe, Mac hands them the tickets. Oh wait, no, he doesn't. He doesn't have the tickets. Finally, everybody bashes on Mac for letting them down, which is so annoying because, of course, they're all the issue here. And it turns out that Madame Foster, during that really awkwardly long hug, took all the tickets and took all of her friends that were going to be at that tea party with her. And the Europe girl gets to go, which I feel like is a happy ending for the viewer's perspective. And finally, the credits have the Europe girl finally getting there, and it's really sweet. Overall, I don't see why this is a really bad episode. I mean, I definitely get that it's disappointing given the title is about going to Europe, and it's all about them staying in one single place, but it does follow the normal story structure that Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends has set up. This is more of a sitcom episode where they're given this plot, and they kind of stay in the confines of this one area. But if it weren't so funny, I would probably say it was a terrible episode, but but it wasn't. It wasn't a bad episode. So Foster's Home didn't let me down here, and if anything, I'm surprised with how it turned out to be so positive, especially given all the stuff I've seen online. It's smack dab in the middle of the series, so it's clear that the voice is already established and the show has a pacing, so that's definitely not the issue. I personally had less enjoyment around the final season, but who's to say that those are technically worse episodes? I definitely find this to be very offensive for wasting my time. But yeah. Okay, so I don't usually get into a lot of regular show because I'm not a regular watcher. No, but seriously, I don't watch this show that much. I did a little research online and I found an episode that a lot of fans seem to dislike, and it's called Format Wars 2. I'm assuming there's a Format Wars 1, but I'm only really devoting time to the second one. So we start with the main characters all eating lunch, talking about this really cool action movie they just saw. Benson asks if they have it on VHS, and everybody has an audible gasp, because apparently that is completely obsolete. And the new thing is, ...
Gotta watch it on the best format out there.
What format is that?
Laser discs. Yeah, Mordecai and Rigby take Benson to a laser disc store, which I can guarantee doesn't exist anymore. And the format wars seem to be about the way people watch media. Kind of reminds me a little South Park, the way it's like a lot of pop culture commentary. And as somebody who believes in a lot of physical media, I find it hilarious how into it the shop owner is.
See, back here is the first prophecy. Here you're defeating VHS during the great format wars of 3 months ago. There's me in my Laserdisc Guardian form. And there I am undergoing painful surgery to look human again. Say, who's that handsome devil?
He even tells them about a prophecy where digital media essentially kept rendering things obsolete, which is super relevant. The man tells them about a second prophecy, a new format known as the DVD. They say the only way to stop it is the universal remote. They basically are against the DVD because this is going to render laser discs. They go onto a roof to see that the prophecy is real, and Benson thinks it's ridiculous, but when the sun hits them just right, it reveals where the universal remote is, in some store. The main cast is interrupted. It's a man that says he is DVD, with an army of people that look like DVDs.
Have a son? Why am I not surprised?
It's cool because his eyes have that reflection on the back of his CD, you would see. And he also admits to being the son of Laserdisc. He calls him out for having more data than him, and everything is just non-personal. It is essentially a infomercial about moving on in physical media. DVD mentions they have a new ally, the internet. Okay, I see 100% where this is going. Of course, it ends up in a giant battle between all three of these things, with internet clearly being overpowered. Laserdisc and DVD are the primary war, but you could tell that it is rendering obsolete. They use a physical firewall, which is perfect. Then the internet becomes overpowered, so Laserdisc and DVD actually have to team up. And the main characters are just kind of in the middle of this giant galactic battle going on in a parking lot.
All obsolete formats must be neutralized.
I'm not obsolete, idiot!
All obsolete formats must be neutralized.
Stop saying that! Special features!
Nobody cares about special features. Only
In the end, the main cast get a universal remote and fly away on a DVD. They're able to completely shut down the DVDs and the internet with the click of the universal remote. The episode ends with all the formats hanging out in Mordecai and Rigby's living room watching TV. I can see why this one isn't super favorable. It feels like this could be done in any TV show, but I can see why people don't love it. I personally think it is really good and interesting and geared towards me, but maybe I'll just like regular show in general anyway. I know the usual format is we start with like an ordinary world and they have this mundane problem, but then it quickly escalates into something really meta and always unfolds that way. And I can see why this is a little bit of a deviation. It seems a little too grounded. Although, I mean, I guess the fight between digital and DVD is not grounded at all. But this is an episode most people don't really like. But what do you guys think? Have you seen this episode, and is it good?
fidelity is not a priority for consumers. Free streaming content will conquer all.
Overall, these episodes are a lot more disturbing than my first videos, and I'm having a lot of fun really critiquing some of these. If you guys would like the idea of me doing like the best of type videos, please comment below, because that would be super fun. But yeah, Powerpuff Girls, Foster's Home, regular show, and Flapjack really had some low episodes, some lowbrow episoding. But you know what? The 2000s cartoons were never normal, and I will admit to that personally. Don't forget to subscribe, and thank you for checking into Johnny 2000. Have a great night.